is. Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to the MOKR Mastermind. We have our usual attendees today, and it's wonderful to have each of you. Thanks for showing up. Carol will be on a little later today, is what she mentioned. And Andrew is going to be giving us his MOKR presentation, and then we're going to dive into the mastermind side of it. So Andrew, we'll give you till half past, and then we'll dive into, if you want to take all that time, that's fine. If not, we'll dive into questions and masterminding.
Yep. Yeah, I haven't gone through and planned my timing as much as I would for this sort of presentation, but I'm pretty sure that that should be plenty of time for what I want. Let's see.
And I'm just going to open it up so that you can use any of the sharing as well, sharing screen.
Cool. All right. Where are you, thing? No, I've confused myself. There we go. All right. Take over the screen. Yep, I want that. Share. All right. Zooming through pretty pictures. So my project is the Wallaby's Rock Garden, which is a 20-acre property in southwest Victoria in Australia, near Warrnambool. About 3 years ago, it all got destroyed in fire. So it had been operating as a permaculture property, running permaculture southwest Victoria. Yeah, people appearing. Yeah, had been working as permaculture Victoria, permaculture southwest Victoria, running workshops and groups around there. Got destroyed in St. Patrick's Day's bushfires that wiped it all out. So a pretty picture of it all after having been burnt, so you can see a level of some of the destruction of it. I have a green box there. Can you actually see things properly?
I can see everything outside of that green box. I'm not sure why that green box is there, but
yep, cool. I'll ignore the green box. So yeah, the entire property, 20 acres. So the plan now, for one, it's got to be rebuilt in order for me to be able to live there. The other thing is, got 20 acres. How can I best make use of it, since I've got to go through all the planning permits and everything to get that all set up to be a property again. So that's a general quick sort of rundown for the long-term plan. So showing some of the permaculture design of it. So the main lot of property and previous building and infrastructure was all basically up on top of the hill, as the fire sort of learnt. So the fire sort of moved through, from the west and pushed through along the top of the ridge. So part of the thought now is, while up there it gives you awesome views, let's see if we can show some of the awesome views. Well, there's some bits down the bottom, so there's pretty horses and things. Surrounded by a creek. That's the main area. So it previously has been a quarry, so there's a lot of very nice little microclimates and different areas to be able to build things up with. Some of the housing, which again was on top of the hill, again destroyed by the fire, and so just having to be rebuilt, and it's all in the middle of that construction. So not tremendously pretty at the moment, but functional. That's the main point. So as you can sort of imagine, from on top of the hill, from a permaculture point of view, having that big U of containers gives it all protection from wind. There you go. So there's a prettier view of what it's actually like on top of the ridge. So it's got huge, up on top of the ridge, it's got huge views. You can see all over the place. Surrounded by that creek. Oh, where was actually? So the moment is, yep, up on top of the hill. The objective is to move at least some of the major construction down to the bottom of the hill. So down into this floodplain, which is down onto the east. So that means I still get east and northern lights, so Australia, so the means it's getting morning light and light throughout the day. So this presentation or planning is about initially getting it rebuilt up to be a residence for me. So I've got somewhere to live that's not freezing cold. So as you can imagine, the shipping containers are quite cold in winter, which is okay for me. I just wrap myself in blankets, but my dog's 16 years old, and so I need to make something nice and warm enough for him so he doesn't shiver and look all sad at me. So I'm getting prefab buildings that are being set up. So that's all Energy Star compliant to level 7. I don't know if that's internationally connected or if those numbers mean the same thing internationally. Basically, it means it's got good insulation and is quite livable. That means that can then act as the standard, as the base for me to be able to work from, and I can continue to expand out the gardening. So it can act as a permaculture, can act as a demonstration permaculture site. A lot of what did exist before has regrown quite nicely. So with some of the pictures before, yeah. So some of those little trees, some of them had dropped dead and they've just been able to resprout and come back again. So one of the good things with permaculture and fire is that it does work. All of the things like having pioneer species and things that get into the roots, yeah, it does work, but obviously everything gets thrown back a lot by being killed. So yeah, plants and everything. Anyway, so the objective is, yeah, small prefab house down on that eastern plain, continuing to rebuild back on top of the hill. That's mainly just basically the gardening with the shipping containers. The shipping containers will become more making use of adobe and earthbag. So super adobe and earthbag construction and that, so more fire resistance. Since again, it is on a more fire threatened position. There's 20 acres, so there's plenty of other spots for it. So there's the other floodplains down here. Ways needs to be separated out to increase regenerative agriculture. So as I said, we've got the pretty horses, so they are a good tourist thing for people to see. But again, got to act as the regenerative agriculture part. So they wander around, poo, eat the plants, but it's got to be controlled so they're not destructive. But for the first stage, so all of that is a long-term plan. Obviously getting construction, setting things up so that it's ready to have multiple buildings, so camping's possible, so tiny houses can move on, and that's all within the regulatory framework that you're allowed to have them. The framework which I'm using is doing it as a camping site, but that will take a long time. So within the MOKR, and we're aiming for within 3 months as for what we're describing. So even that, going through my plan of still sort of said, this is my plan in about a year, and what's going to be working in the next 3 months. But the first stage, as I say, is just setting up my construction for me to live. But here's just some of the notes for longer terms. All right, so running through the MOKR itself. Where are we? Yoink. Where's the notes? There we go. All right, so running through the format of the main document. Main why statement: to create an environment where for people who stay at the gardens feel relaxed and connected with nature. So one of the main things that's most important is that it's, I feel happy there, that it's a nice and relaxing place, and it's been able to advance my life, just how much I feel better, and trying to contribute that to be able to help other people. So for just camping, so for very short term, and trying to build it up in longer term to be able to have longer term residents. So partly contributing to affordable housing in whatever forms that makes. Because a lot of tiny house places, they don't do it legally. They just say, just hope no one notices. I want to make sure that it all actually works. And so the mission mantra, I'm committed to maintaining an unwavering faith that I'll have a legal residence that is comfortable all year round at the gardens before winter 2021, so that I and my dog can live in it. That can act as a base for continuing permaculture example and training. I'll put extraordinary effort until I do. No matter what, there is no other option. So yeah, first step, somewhere for me to be. So objectives, whoops. For the, have I got that right? End of first quarter, that's end of first quarter 2021. Yes, end of first quarter 2021, so April 2021. Have the requirements for my primary residence to be legally built. So one of the issues with it all is that it's covered with Aboriginal cultural significance overlays and environmental overlays and just all sorts of things that make some of the constructions slightly more legally challenging. So that's the main thing that needs to be all chased down, aside from all just the normal building things, is what's the land going to be and making sure that that's all fine for structural engineering wise. The other objective before the fourth quarter of 2020, have Permaculture Southwest Victoria be an active group again. So obviously me losing everything to a fire and my permaculture demonstration garden being lost, that means I haven't been working very much on the permaculture group. It's still been active in Facebook, but in person, yeah, a bit less. We haven't been doing active things. And of course, that's all been considerably messed up by coronavirus. So we haven't been able to have like the normal monthly workshops and things like that. I've been trying to get that up again, and hoping to be able to, we'll be starting again in spring. But yeah, Victoria has just had extra levels of lockdown. So who knows how that's all going to work. All right, lead metrics. So I've broken this into a few sections. First, construction organization. Get a full area map showing the locations for a 1-year plan. So that's the main thing which I had popping up before. So giving me an idea as to main housing, main shared areas, main camping. That's obviously going to continue to refine as I go. Get contact with in a planning group. So I wanted to get the experts who are dealing with this. So I've got in contact with a planning consultancy. So I've already done this within this time. They've got a lot of people who used to work for council who then work with them to do planning. So the person who I was dealing with, the council planning officer, is actually working for that company now. I have got in contact with them, started off my, I don't know, accepted their quotes and whatnot. So that's hopefully they can then deal with an awful lot of the legal requirements, so I don't need to. Aboriginal cultural significance overlay. Again, I've found out a bit more about this in the time between me writing this and today. That's hard work. If I do actual buildings, that triggers a lot of the cultural significance overlay. So a lot of the things which I've been, so making extra smaller buildings, which was my plan for people to be able to say, is that, and triggering a lot of the stuff which happens for the significance overlays can be like, was well beyond what my expected budget is. So it's more like, okay, I've got to consider this for about 10 years time. So it means rather than saying, I'll make a small building for that location, things like tiny houses don't trigger that off. So that's one of the things which I've been thinking about. Environmental significance overlay, talking to Glenelg Hopkins Catchment Management Authority. I'm perfectly happy to do anything they want since permaculture property, and making sure that it is as aware and doing the best for the environment as is possible. Fire plan, yep, it's had a fire go through it, so I'm very aware of the threat of what fire is. With a lot of the initial construction of that's already started, so making sure that all of my gates are double wide and a fire truck can get through it. Making sure the roads are big enough that fire trucks can move through, that they can turn around. So I've got to talk with the CFA. What the hell CFA stand for? Fire Authority. Oh, Country Fire Authority. So making sure that's right. Redoing of my actual borders. So I don't have that on this thing. But because it's a ex-farmland, a lot of the fences have been put up over 100 years and no one's bothered to actually check them properly. So again, I want to make sure that everything's legally correct. It's not too much of a concern, but I will need to resurvey everything. But that basically means that if any of my fences are moved, I'm just going to do native plantings, and they'll be a 10-meter wide fire break or native planting break. So that doesn't really matter if things are wrong. I'll just do a fence on the right area. And if I've eaten an extra bit, then that's an extra bit of fence to stop cows and horses from eating my acacias and hakias and whatever. Roads required. The caravan park has a significant amount of stuff which you need to do for roads. That's also part of what the fire plan's required. Watering system, composting stuff, that's what a really quite difficult bit I've still got to hunt down to do with that. Grey water, because I'm surrounded by a creek, the catchment, I can't just go and have, I don't know, it makes it difficult for septic systems and especially composting systems because I'm all off grid. I can't just go and take it all to the sewerage. So exactly what I've got to set up for that. Insurance costs, engineering, and getting solar everything set up. So I can do a lot of that myself because I've got an engineering background, but I don't have the registrations for all of those things. So I need to get electricians and things to get all that set up. So beyond just the basic house, then I've got to figure out the costs and for the caravan permit beyond just my simple housing. Find out what's possible without doing caravan park registration. So what my lower costs can be. I know that there is a reason amount I can do. So just camping, I can do a single B&B. I can just do caravan storage and things like that, whereas not people staying. And start, just figuring out all of the different costs for everything. So especially for long-term residents, and insurance costs will be a big extra part of it. Marketing and network upgrades. So I've got to revamp my website. It was all nicely set up, but basically during the fire, I use just Google sites for it. I can do it myself, but it's easier. Got to revamp the website. So part of that is Google went and changed their CMS, their content management system a little bit within it. And it migrated everything from the previous one to the new one, but it doesn't just look quite as pretty as it used to. So everything still exists and it's reasonably pretty and I've been able to move pictures around, but that's just something I need to pay more attention to. So yeah, some of it is just quite bland and empty looking. But then other bits I have paid a bit of attention and made it prettier, but still needs work. Discuss marketing with Phoenix, right? So I've been dealing with, normally I work in technology areas. At the moment, I'm embedded within a marketing department, so just talking to people at work. Phoenix is someone who's, as I don't know, you almost may guess by someone who calls himself Phoenix, is quite into all of the sustainability and green things. And he is he's a marketing and communications person, unlike me, who's an engineer. And he does all of the going on to glamping sites and whatnot. So just, I don't know, building up to get him more involved, to act as more of a face and be able to talk to these things to me. So as I discussed, so I can, I don't know, just get on with teaching you the techie bits and he can go and be friendly to everyone. And the other main area which I want to build up is the permaculture group. So the aim is I want to get 3 meetings in spring, write the wind break design workshop. That was just the aim, is to have a specific workshop being run during this time. Again, how that's going to work with COVID, whether I've got to do it as a Zoom meeting or something. Get cuttings and propagation material, just because seed swaps and propagation swaps are one of the most useful things for people. So it's just a real thing that can pass around and helps build up the strength of the group. And I've got a lot of that material ready. So I have had 2 years of regrowing after the fire. And so things are alive, and just what other content is of interest to the group. And I think that's possibly all of my list of things. There you go. There is my lovely presentation. Sorry, it's not exactly organized, but yeah. Shut her away and tell me off.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Is there a specific, so we have your, and I'm in this document right now. You can see me kind of playing around. Um, what I'm noticing for the objectives, um, the just a quick note on creating the MOKR and designing the objectives. The you want to make sure that they are quantifiable, right?
Yep.
So have the requirements for the primary residence to be legally built. You could um, place that in a more quantifiable position. What is it that's uh, you know, maybe there's 5 requirements that you need, or I think you kind of listed off the requirements that you need in your kind of task list that's in
Yep.
your lead metrics. But just making sure that you can see that there's
Yep.
seven things or 7 requirements that will that I need to have the primary residence. What are those requirements? Kind of identifying them in lead metrics, I guess, is a way that you can track that as well. And then with have the Permaculture Southwest Victoria be an active group. Again, active being a really general term, right?
Yeah, true. That
Uh,
I think I've got that. Yeah. So with that, I probably did move them into the lead mix. So as in have 3 meetings in spring.
yeah, so you could move that. That is actually probably you have a certain amount of control over that, but you still don't have. There's a lot of variables to it, right? So that would
Yep.
be more of um, a lag metric or your main objective, right? And then on key results, just and this is for everybody too, as they create their MOKR document, lead metrics and your key results. We want to make sure that the lead metrics are things that we can have complete control over, right?
Yep.
It seems like most of these tasks are that way, but the metric also you want to have quantifiable. So construction organization, if that's the lead metric, what is it that is it hours spent, or is it uh, um, tasks kind of clicked off the list, right? If you have a set amount of tasks that you have control over accomplishing, is like how many tasks are we accomplishing in a month, something like that, that you can quantify and see progress. And it really does help you just to even in when you're doing projects like this that are really hard to define a lead metric for. If you do the lead metric as like the project itself and the action steps that I need to do to complete, and you can almost see the bar go up in it and kind of gamify it that way, right?
Yep.
Like we have something out of something, tasks done to complete. That will help you visualize it as well, and see it happening. Those were just some MOKR things that came up as you were talking.
Yep.
Open it up for any other questions, and if you have any specific challenges that you're working on right now, maybe we can talk about those too.
Yeah. Well, no, the main thing, it's been good, as in just having this lying around. So I've had all my previous lists and things, but it's been good, as I said, just having this list and knowing that this presentation is happening. Have been able to get a reasonable amount of stuff done just from paying attention to it. So yeah, contact with the planning group and getting that things done. A lot of things I've because it's short term and I want to do achievable goals. Like, and again, because of COVID, so it's very hard to get. I'm stuck in Melbourne, so I'm basically 4 hours away from my property at the moment. And because everything's locked down, just getting anything connected or anything moving has been quite difficult. But it's, I don't know, it has been good being able to having the focus things to, all right, talk to the planning group. Okay, I've got them, and they're actually gotten up and started now. So that's one of the main difficulties at the moment, just contacting people. Everyone's ridiculously busy if they're contactable at all, and then getting them to call back. So everything's slower than I would otherwise expect. So rather than talk to someone, they'll get back to me in a couple of days. It's talk to someone, oops, no, they're busy, can't get in contact, and might take weeks until I hear things. That's my main real difficulties at the moment. Just
Okay.
because a lot of it is not under my control, and I'm used to home DIY and building myself, and all of this is regulatory, and it's not under my control at all.
Yeah, and so I think finding those pieces that are under your control and what you can do at this moment in time. So a question for you, Andrew, are you it sounds like you have another job, right, that you're working
Yep.
on you're in Melbourne right now?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And is it engineering job? You said it was close to the marketing department.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's still doing. I'm still in digital operations, but it's just embedded within a marketing department.
Mm-hmm. And
You're
kind of off site of your property right now, wanting to get on site. And that's kind of the big push that you're trying to accomplish for this next. Are you wanting to be on site by the end of first quarter in April?
Well, winter next year is my main aim. So start of June.
Start of June. Okay.
So I expect I will be there at once this sort of lockdown finishes. So middle of September. That's my aim. So our spring. That's when I'll move back there, and I'll stay in the cold shipping containers. But it'll be spring, so it'll be fine by then.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so you have to get all the requirements done and things past code essentially for you to be living there, and that's what you're working towards.
Well, I can live there as a temporary residence, but it will not. The location would not count as a legal residence. But that's what I want to get. So I want to get up to legal residence for June 21. I'll stay there, but I will just be a camper in effect in spring, so in a couple of months. Does that make sense?
So just to clarify, so the goal for at the end of this MOKR period, because obviously, winter is not the end of this MOKR when you want to have it farther along. So just during this MOKR, your big push is getting the regulations in order so it is legal. Is that correct? Yes. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
Okay. So just as you were talking, I totally get that, like contacting other people and paperwork and red tape, like that is only within your control a certain amount. But in terms of finding something to track for you that's in your control, you could be tracking calls made, you could be tracking hours spent researching or hours spent contacting, or if there's certain departments that you need to get in contact, kind of checking the box with that department, just to make it visual so you feel like you're moving forward so you don't get stuck like strangling in the red tape. It's red tape is terrible. But just so that you can see it, it's really helpful to have those things visual, putting this in kind of a dashboard situation. But those type of things that you do have control over, your personal efforts, your research, your reaching out to contact, if there's letters you have to write or whatever, and really showing the progress with that, it will help keep your motivation up and help keep your focus. Just a thought.
Cool. That was one of the things with this that made me, because it's my main project that I need to get done before everything else, but I was thinking it doesn't tremendously fit very well within the 3-month MOKR plan, but I know it's what I need to do, so that's what I was going to.
That's okay. So many times we have bigger bigger endeavors, but we just want to focus on this chunk. What can I do in this chunk of time to sprint through this chunk? And then that keeps motivation going for the next chunk.
Yep.
So you can keep moving forward for the big guy, right?
Yeah.
I'm just interested, before the fire, is this what you were planning as well? Or like was it on its way to doing what you're doing now, or was it a totally different thing? Was the permaculture group happening? Like, what was going
Yep.
on this land before?
It was so, but I was much more focused on lower costs, and doing things still within regulations, but doing things at a smaller scale. So the building which I had there was small enough that it didn't count as didn't count as a building, and it was only there, enough time. I don't know. So the permaculture group was up and running. It was doing monthly meetups with workshops. It's continued to be active, so especially through Facebook and online. But yeah, all of that had pretty much shut down. I've only done like 3 workshops or something like that in the last 2 years. Building it up to do more, building it up to do the caravan park, and so people staying long term. That wasn't particularly part of it. It was just doing small levels of camping and more workshops within it. So it's really only been after the fire where I've been doing, and just also me being, I don't know, that much older, just thinking how much it would be better to be able to have more people there in order to be able to get more work done, rather than just being me and me having put all my energy into it. So it's sort of the same, just, I don't know, slightly different, basically, if that makes sense. Probably because rather than doing full-time permaculture, which obviously doesn't make you a ton of money, and I've gone back to doing IT stuff, which means I've got more money to put into more infrastructure. So that's the main sort of difference. So yeah, more money, which lets me more infrastructure, but that has more regulatory requirements.
So, and another question, just to clarify, with the property, are you looking for, and with the caravan, I should say, the kind of park, are you looking for the kind of the passive income from that to kind of support your expenses there? And are you planning to be, like, what's your ratio, like still working full-time job as this is a side hustle, or do you want to move fully into it? Like, what's your long-term goal for the property and its income and revenue from the property? Or even like maybe a couple stages of it, because I could see several different ways that you can go about making the property profitable, or using it in several different ways.
So right now, the only income basically comes from adjustment of horses and animals. So that's just a small amount, but basically that offsets my rates. Don't know what the American term for that is, property taxes, for the year. Because it's all off grid, I have very little other costs. There's so there's not a lot of expenses that it needs to do, so it can run very, very cheaply. My aim is, I don't know, I do enjoy my current work, and I can do it remotely, and that's one of the useful things with COVID, that businesses are looking more likely to let things run more remotely. So that means I've got reasonable income for it. So at the moment I do 4 days a week. I'd probably drop that down to say 3, but means I'm on location. I can go in, do work. Like right now, I will go in, do a task, have a break, go out and dig some mulch, which works well. So that means hopefully I've got more income I can continue to build up in the future. My main aim for having other people around is, the initial thing that made me think about it is just COVID. So much of this is COVID related in ways. I just know people who have been very precarious in their living situation, and like, you're probably going to lose your houses. Okay, I've got heaps of room. How can I help you to do that? well, I probably can't legally let you come and stay on my place. So what do I need to do to make sure I've got that? So one of the things with the caravan park, even if I'm only setting it up for, say, 3 people, I can, once I've got it set up, the aim is that I should be able to have 20 people legally staying there. I don't want that many able to, or I don't want that many permanently, but I do like having the ability to do that. It depends on how hard it is. I've never run a caravan park before. I've never run a hospitality organization before. So a lot of this is set up to be scaled so I can learn as I go. So if initial things is just set up more camping and get that going well, neato. See how hard that is, whether with the cleaning bits of it. And as that scales up to whether I do have more permanent residents or more people who just stay for the Port Fairy Music Festival or whatnot, we'll see. So if it can support itself, and any other income I bring in is just a bonus, neato. I don't know. Basically, I want to overkill it with ways of income, also because I don't know, who knows when the apocalypse will happen. And so whether I need to just make sure I've got enough resources coming in so that it is all ready to transition for meteors hitting or whatever, or whether it can just continue to grow and I've just got the economy continues to run sensibly and normally, and bring in money for there. So the more it can offset my costs, the better. But I'm also, a considerable focus is keeping my costs low. So yes.
Awesome.
It just depends on how things turn out. I'm trying to scale things so it can go up and down as I need.
Yeah. Andrew, are you familiar with the farm at Byron Bay?
Sorry, say again?
Are you familiar with the farm at Byron Bay?
I've heard of it, but no.
Yeah, okay. How attached are you to owning all this land? Like, would you share off parts of your land, sell off parts of your land? Or
This is Victoria, and that's really difficult. So
okay,
the
cool.
rules in New South Wales are very different for property sharing compared to in Victoria. Victoria is ridiculously difficult to split these things up. So that's why
I don't know if you've heard of
the new, own it myself.
New website, a new concept of like fragmented ownership. There's a company that's just kind of launching called bricklet.com.au. So that's another model you can explore. But the reason why I bring up the farm at Byron Bay is because, like, what you're explaining to me, I feel like, and I'm not sure your personality type and how much you want to endure, but I feel like you're going to get to burn out very quickly trying to do too many things. What the farm at Byron Bay did really well is they realized that they took the McDonald's model. They went, we want to be the real estate business. We want to bring people to this space. Now, of course, they're in Byron Bay, so they've got tourism on their side, but they leased out different enterprises on their farm to other people. So the restaurant is owned by someone different. The cafe is owned by someone different. The community garden is owned by someone different. The sheds where all the learning activities happen is owned by someone different. And then they sit there and just collect the lease from everyone. So they don't have to run the risk of knowing how to run all those businesses. And they say, we've got this space, you tender to be the restaurant that sits on this space. You can Google how much they're worth. They recently sold the business model, or they tried to sell it, and they're valued at about 22 million AU dollars. And that was simply by grabbing the land and sharing it with other enterprises who are really good at what they do. So they had an expert run the restaurant, they had an expert run the community gardens. However, the restaurant needed to buy from the community garden. And when the restaurant wanted, 6 pigs for the next season, the community garden made that happen. The waste from one enterprise became the input and the feed for the next enterprise. They run a lot of events there that are sustainably driven and community focused. So that was just, I wanted to highlight that, and you can explore that and see whether it's a good fit for yourself. I wanted to mention Bricklet because I know that I've been having chats with them as well for the Farming Secrets community, because one of the biggest challenges with farmers is that they have too much land and legally they can't sell it. But Bricklet apparently gives this solution where you end up being a principal of interest on title for a particular space. So it's quite more protected and legal. And you can and you as the owner can say, I want to own 50% of the property as mine, and the other 50% off it's kind of like crowdsourcing investment because everyone buys their little share of land, and it could be another avenue that you don't have to be a caravan park kind of environment. With your presentation, what do you actually need? Like, what do you want others to help you with? Because I feel like it's a lot of like what you're going to get out of this project. I don't mean that in any disrespect, but like, if I'm here ready to help you, what can I do? Do you need like manpower to, people power to come and work on the place? Do you need like financial capital? Do you need investors? Like, what's in it for me as someone hearing your idea, which I love, and I think it's great to create this type of community. But I'm just a bit confused to like how I can help you, and what do I get out of this engagement? Because it's about like where you're going to live, like what you want to achieve. And so I just want to like get a bit of understanding of like, if I join you on this journey, what do I get out of it?
Well, that's, as I said, part of the issue with, to cover a few things, a lot of the shared enterprise and whatnot, yes, that's something which I want to work for later. Part of the issue is Victoria, as I said, Victoria has very different regulations to New South Wales and Queensland. I've had a look at the bricklet thing. I need to contact them further because I don't see how that will work again within the Victorian regulations, but maybe I assume that they've thought about all that, but I strongly suspect that they're thinking in different states.
Well, quick question on the bricklet, Ray, and also maybe clarifying on how it would work. I think if it's not dividing the property out, it's just an ownership in the title. Is that what you mentioned, Ray? Like, so you're not dividing. You're not dividing the property out, so you don't have to worry a lot with the zoning and that type of issue.
Correct, that's right. So one of the ways that a lot of these like tiny house villages have tried to set up, which becomes very messy, is setting up like a company with shareholdings, and then people would own a percentage of the company. Now that's quite difficult because then you fall under company law, and a lot of shit can go wrong in company, and there's a lot of things, and then it's very hard to say, okay, well, I want to sell my share. How do I go about this? Bricklet is an Australian-based company. They've been modeling it in other states. You're correct, but they do have projects in Victoria. And I'm very curious about this as well. I've been exploring it for like the last 3 months. And it's an Australian-based company because I've seen this model in other countries, and I think, okay, well, that's hard for me to trust because our laws are very different and there's jurisdictions and so forth. But the idea of it is that you do get your name on title, but you don't actually subdivide your property like on a subdivision kind of schedule or folio. It's more that and I guess the way that it works is it creates its own economy, like your bricklet into a particular property, because you can use this to go and buy investment in other people's properties and projects. It's almost like crowdfunding. A lot of the projects are, say, commercial buildings, and everyone owns maybe a $20,000 bricklet. So you get to, buy into that project, which might then give you like a return. But the bricklets are worth, like in any economy, what others are willing to pay for it. So if I go and sell a bricklet and I get 30 grand for it, then all of a sudden, everyone else's bricklets could be deemed to be worth 30 grand, no different to shares and gold and silver. So it kind of brings that model onto it, but there is no actual formal subdivision. And from what I understand as well, you can use this as a form of equity. So if you own shares in these bricklets, you can go to bank and say, I own these shares, so I have X net worth, as they explain it. So I haven't tested it outside of what they're telling me, which I take as a grain of salt, but I think it's a nice way of thinking. And there's more and more of these kind of group owned enterprise things popping up. And with the way that affordability is, especially here in Australia, like it makes sense for something like this to happen, and the government legislation making it easier. The other thing that's happened as well is a lot of the paper-based systems in Australia are starting to get removed. So instead of like when settling on a property, everything needing to happen in person with actual paper and wasting everyone's time, people have created digital platforms, which means that transfer of wealth can happen a lot more efficiently. And then you lay a blockchain on top, that's like another explosion of movement. And the problem with selling and moving property has always been it's not very easy to liquidate. But with the introduction of technology, we can all of a sudden liquidate. So we could get to a point where the property market becomes day trading, you know, potentially in the future. But just a new way of thinking. And I just wanted to share it because it's something that keeps coming up, especially in permaculture groups where people want to share multiple land and don't know how to do it legally, or like co-share land. And a lot of the farmers that I work with want to sell off parts of their farm, but the council won't let them subdivide. And there's people who want to buy 20 acres, but don't want to buy 200 acres. So yeah, that was my just 2 cents on it.
Yep. Now, all of that is stuff which I do want to work with, but the first objective is for me to live. If we're aiming for a 3-month MOKR, so unfortunately that's taken the bit that's of interest of, I don't know, this presentation. So it's not very, here is an interesting business thing for what we can go. So a lot of that, I've tried to give a bit of a description for, but that's for the longer term plans, but that is in the 5 to 10 years, well, hopefully less than that, probably 3 to 10 years. But yeah, that's not exactly what I need to focus on right now. And what I need to focus on is making sure I've got somewhere to live. So the permaculture group does exist. I've got in contact with lots of other people. There's lots of interest in setting in people visiting or tiny houses, and so if the things that are useful for, I don't know, you other permipreneurs or whatever the word is, that help is, different models and different ways that I can get that all to work, because I don't know. My first objective is I just need this to work, and I don't want to get tied up in things that are going to cause me problems in the future. So right now, the scale is basically I own everything, so that can't get messed up by anyone else yet. If I do get into leasing, so like the smallest leasing thing which I've got now is adjustment of horses. If that gets scaled up to larger things, so like I'm thinking, all right, that area would be really good to start producing native grasses. I would like to be able to get local farmers and go, here you go, you go and deal with that 3 acres down there in that floodplain, go start playing with native grasses and grains down there. My models to how I don't do that, I don't know. That's vague ideas which will be thought about in 6 months' time. That's what I would have been doing 2 years ago, but unfortunately, fire. I don't know. Does that sort of answer your question? You can. My long-term plans are a tad fluffy. Anything which I can get from you guys that can help me seal that up in later times, that would be good.
So if COVID wasn't here, like, is there capital behind you to execute this project straight away, or like, are you? Yep. Okay. Cool. So it's not like you're not seeking investment or like, wanting to. So it's more just now. Okay. Cool. So it's just really shit
we
timing.
Can say, I can chuck you 100,000 and that's good. And here is a way which I think we can get 20% return. Neato, but I do not need it.
Yep. Yeah. Cool. So really, I guess, there are, my thought would be just to kind of open source a lot of the activities that you do and say, okay, this weekend we're going to, and I think you're already comfortable with running workshops and things like that. So like just getting people around, I think using COVID as a way of kind of building that community and like foreshadowing some of the activities that you want to get people to engage with. It's always good to kind of like, I guess like build your list in marketing terms of people who are interested or put their hand up. So when you are ready to execute, you're then not becoming exhausted trying to find the people. You already have like the army behind you. And I think you can do that, quite well with just, I call it open sourcing your project and say, this is what I'm working on. I'm looking for people to come along with the ride when COVID disappears, or, we learn to live with it. And really just get people buying into your ideas, sharing like some of the projects that you want to run. And then, when you're ready to start building a stone wall, for instance, you just say, hey, we're going to run a stone wall workshop this weekend. It's $30 each to come along, and we're looking for 10 people to give us a helping hand, because people will pay to learn as well. So you can use it as a way of just even covering costs of food and stuff and break even. You don't need to monetize them coming, but you also want them committed to show up. So a little fee there along the way, but open sourcing and just sharing your story to your community and just get a tribe of people following what you're trying to achieve that kind of buys into it. And there'd be so many people who have land like this that want to learn with you and say, oh, cool, this is a project that I want to do in 10 years time. Let me join Andrew along for his ride and I'll learn from his mistakes and not do it later. Or you teach them the shortcuts, you know? So you know, I'm one of those people, you know, I can't wait to get access to land again. And the vision on my farm was very similar to this, like a community space, not so much permaculture driven, but, you know, having different shared spaces. And, you know, the 5 years that I did own the land, just using Gumtree, I would put ads up and, you know, similar to what you're doing with Agistment. But we had someone there with a tiny house living, we had someone there with a tiny house building, we had the main house rented out. So like there was heaps of different people just sharing the land. And that was simply just using Gumtree and doing like classified ads. You know, $50 here, $25 there, $30 here a week, and it all kind of adds up, and similar, breaking even with rates and insurance. You know, so there are definitely people out there that are willing to do it. And, you know, I think at the start you just need to not ask for permission and ask for forgiveness. You know, so especially if you're going to like sneak people on with tiny houses and things like that.
Well, that's
yeah.
That's part of the fire is also a significant part with that. So previously, I was able to do more things just doing it and not get noticed because hey, I'm underneath. You can't see anything. Yep, I'm on the top of a hill, but there's lots of things blocking me off. Now I've had the fire. I'm the guy who's running the sustainable farm that has got taken out by the fire and has helped run the lawsuit against the power company that's supply to everyone. So I can't hide as much as I used to. So I do need to make sure that I'm a bit more
stealth.
Yes.
Yeah, a bit more. But yeah, but but I definitely feel like building community, getting people to buy into your idea. So when you are ready, and I think that would be a good use of time, because you can sit there in your living room, making a video, sharing your ideas, sharing plans like this, and just getting people to put their hand up and say, yeah, I want to be part of this movement. You know, you got to follow the 30% rule or even the 10% rule and say only 10% of people will actually follow through. Yeah. So build a community of 500 people, and then you may get 50 people kind of showing up and actually helping.
Yep.
You know,
One other thing I was thinking of with this community that Ray's working on, and I'm glad that you have it in your MOKR's stuff that you're working on right now, right? Is I'm not sure what is necessity for you guys, because in Utah and in lots of states in our area, in the Mountain West of the states, it's actually a necessity for community gardening programs to work. And I don't know if it is for you guys, but you can justify doing that if you know the laws around what's necessity for different organizations. And as long as you're practicing social distancing or whatever, that's what we've been able to do with our community gardens around here and still operate. We've also, Utah's still been, we've opened up quite a bit, and we haven't gone back despite increasing cases, but lower death rates. So we're a different scenario for sure, but just wondering what it is there, and maybe figuring those out so that you can operate within COVID restrictions.
Yeah, it's one of the things I've been thinking, again, with all this, how long COVID's going to last, what sort of planning to do. So normally we'd do a workshop, have 20 odd people, don't need to worry about COVID. Yep, people turns up, neato. In Melbourne, so metropolitan Melbourne, we're locked down that we can't do anything. So you couldn't even run a gardening, you couldn't do a lawn mowing operation. So I know plenty of people who do permaculture in suburban areas that just can't work right now. In the rural areas, so where the Wallaby's Rock Garden is, it is actually, you are allowed to operate to support agriculture. But I'm not sure what the requirement is. I think the limitation is you can't have a meeting, kind of groups of about 4-5 people. But hopefully all of that is going to limit again in 6 weeks. Because Victoria, relative to America, we're fantastic. But it's still, we'd want it to cut it down and go to full elimination as much as possible. But yeah, it's just hard to tell. Yeah, part of the issue with all of this is all of the really getting things rolling, having the fire sucked. It was very depressing and meant I didn't really even want to talk to anyone for a year. So trying to do the, hey, I'm an active, passionate person, I care about all this thing, come and join me. That's certainly been putting off a lot of the doing workshops. It's only been within the last year that I've been able to even start thinking along those lines. And it's, only now that I'm starting to really do anything, but COVID getting in the way again. Don't know how to just where I'm going with all of that. I suppose that's a lot of it, just starting that, I don't know, marketing push of getting people to be connected, and me wanting to even talk to them is only slowly beginning.
And I'm just trying to relate and understand as much as I can, because that's got to be a really, really difficult situation, right? To be working on something that you're passionate about and then have the fire kind of destroy stuff. And then it's like, and not everybody, Andrew, I understand you feel more of the introverted type, right? Like you could go without doing the community engagement and all this other stuff, but you're passionate about the actual work that you're doing and the land and doing that type of stuff. I think it's great that you have Phoenix, like, and that you're working with Phoenix. What is, and exploring those relationships, I should say, is maybe something that's could be beneficial, but also it's also really scary to play around with those relationships and get burned on the back end of fully committing. So maybe let's talk about that. If that's something that's might be beneficial to you, like how can we bring people to help you? And I think it's like Ray said, just getting a raise of hands is maybe just the first step that you need. And there might be someone that raises their hand in there that is more apt to do some of the community stuff, but less apt to do some of the gardening and getting their hands dirty stuff, but still wants to be involved, right? And the more that you get a raise of hands and an understanding, and the more that you've defined, and this is coming from a book, Gerber, with the E-Myth, if anybody's ever read the E-Myth, like defining Michael Gerber. Yeah. Defining the roles that you would like to have even before they come in. Essentially, you're carrying those roles right now, right? Yep. And the things that you don't want to do, but you have to do right now, if you define them, and as you get that raise of hands, it might help you to see how you can place them in a volunteer role or whatever type of position that works for you and for them, right? In that moment, right? Because they might be wanting to get involved in this type of work, but their background is entirely in social media and marketing, right? And they want to do something, so they're going to volunteer their time in the social and marketing for a trade in something else, right? And you wouldn't even have that understanding if you didn't get a raise of hand and you didn't already define the roles that you want. Or that you're carrying right now and that you would like to give to someone else, right? That's a thought.
And that's one thing I've been talking to a few other people does seem to be something I do need to do. Because you can go, hey, who wants to help? And there might be a lot of people, but then you do need to define quite clearly what they're doing. Otherwise people are not going to particularly engage. They'll just go, yeah, sure. But
especially volunteer work. We, with our property in Montana, try to put volunteers together when people didn't really understand regenerative ag, didn't understand building earth bag, right? Or why you would, and trying to rally people. We had our first few people come out, and we were not organized with the first one. And the second one, we were a bit more organized. By the third one, we're getting better, but we still, if we were smart, we would have been organized. And the problem is because we weren't organized early on, we lost steam bringing people back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that makes a really good point too, because like some of the things that you may need to research aren't things for your project. You know, raising hands could be like, I want to run a volunteer program. Has anyone got experience and tips on how to do volunteering? You know, what are your you know, like the you know, and then also with your project, like, has anyone gone to council about caravan parks? Because I know from my experience, a lot of caravan parks are crown land, and the government's trying to actually remove them. And there's a push to stop, you know, this land sharing. So, you know, you might have red tape against you. I don't know enough. It's just what I've heard in the grapevine. But, you know, some of the questions you might ask may have nothing to do with your project. It might even be around the Google website. You know, like someone might volunteer their time to build your website and has nothing to do with being on the farm. And that's definitely something that can happen in COVID. You know, and I think just to break your thinking of COVID as a roadblock, like just think about what if COVID is permanent? Like what is, if this is the new formula of living, will you never do anything because COVID's in the way? So with my business, I'm, and with a lot of people I'm working with, I'm just say like, this is a new norm. Like meetup.com is basically brought out new features on their website to say this is an online event. Like there are still heaps of online events running on meetup.com, which was purely based as a physical meetup platform. So, you know, I guess like just treat as if this is always the new norm. What would you do differently if this is the new norm? And have Zoom calls, have one-on-ones, and just pick people's brains. You know, see who's run volunteer programs, who's done farm sharing before. I'll be honest, I've got a lot of things that went really bad with my tiny house experience. You know, and maybe people like who have done that can share wisdoms. You know, even when sharing my land, one of the things I would do is go visit their property, because if, you know, one thing equals everything. If they run their property really shit, they're going to run my land even shitter because it's not their land. So, you know, that would be the number one tip. It's like anyone who wants to come onto my land, I want to see how you live. If you can't keep your room tidy, how are you going to keep my land tidy? You know, one thing equals everything. So like, that's the number one tip that I'd say to anyone. If you're going to invite someone onto your land, see how they live their life, because that will tell you a lot. And so maybe just that could be what sets you up for success. So pick people's brains on things that have got nothing to do with the project, but got to do with like some of the things that you want to run. You know, you need to organize catering. Has anyone ever organized catering for 20 people or more? People put their hand up and then they go, oh, I actually run a catering company that's all, you know, vegan and da-da-da. And then you go, great, you're appointed. How much do you need per head? $40. Great. Tickets are $42 to cover booking fee. Like, you know, solve problems that way. Yeah.
And I like how Ray's going about it and thinking it's market research. It always is, really. And it's answering questions that you don't know the answer to yet, right? You have this question, open it up for the research of it, and don't open it up. Don't just start Googling. That's the problem, I think, a lot with a lot of entrepreneurs and people that are getting involved in new projects these days, is they think, oh, I have this wealth of information. I just need to get online and do some research. You need to talk to people, right, that have experience. And so if you have a question, you go find someone that has an answer to that question. You trade services, or you trade time, or whatever it is, to be able to understand, or you pay them for that time, right? You know, I've done a lot of just paid for their lunch type of deal, right? Or invited them over for a drink or whatever, right? And that's really, that's all it really takes sometimes, right? To get the information you need.
One of the best tips that I ever got in business was don't ask how, ask who. So if you need to say how to build a website, ask who knows how to build a website, and then people will magnetically attract to you. So don't ask how questions, ask who questions. And that changed my life, because that's all I do now. Who has done this before? Who has set this up in Zapier? And then all of a sudden these people come into my life and they go, do you know what? I'll do it for you. It's quicker. I'm like, sweet. Make me a video so then I can learn and pass it on to my team. And that's how I get a lot of shit done. Yeah.
Andrew, just to add to that, what Ray and Josh said, you know, somebody actually just posted on Facebook, right? Does anybody know how to own a land without any family wealth? That's how they put it. Like they've been doing permaculture, and they're young, like they are young farmers. A lot of young farmers are actually trying to get land and they can't do it, right? They said it's like they're in BC right now, in the west of Canada, it's really expensive for them, and they said, we can't do permaculture because we don't own anything, and it's all we have to move every like 3 years, 2 years, right? So like you really just posting something on Facebook, we will generate a lot of reactions and answers from people, and it can be as easy as that. You can go from there.
One of the things from the last week's marketing focus thing, I've been really thinking quite a lot about my Facebook and what things to post there in order to start that. Trying to find find and get more interest from the audience rather than going, I don't know, I think these birds are pretty, I'll post a picture of that. Trying to find more of, okay, what do you want and how can I don't know, what do you want? Sort of questions, I suppose, as much as best I can sort of think about it. So trying to find the people who are like that, the young farmers who don't have land and things like that, and what I can do to help them.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of, sorry, it's a lot of times just using other people's communities, especially when your community is young, when you're asking those questions. So I do that. I'm involved in so many different groups because I've done a lot of startup ideas, and I've tried to generate that without having the community yet. And so I get involved in all of these different communities, and I talk and ask, and then someone will say something, and then I meet one connection, and then I take them out to lunch, or I have a Zoom conversation with them, and I keep that rotation answering my questions, right? And I usually, if you have a list of questions that you're trying to get answered, like write them down, make sure that you're, and you have, I've done Excel spreadsheets where I have a question, and then I have the people that are helping me to answer that question, right?
So true. That's what I'm doing right now with the food forest research thing. Even if people are not, like I just had a conversation with these guys from Seattle, Beacon Food Forests, and they're totally in a different, dealing with different stuff. But it was really nice to know how they got started and like really building that, getting the answers straight from the people who've done it before. But also in out here in BC, I don't know if they're everywhere, but we have this Young Agrarians organization. I'll put the link because they do this land matching thing, and it's so cool. They're a specific thing, and I bet you in Australia, because it's like so vast and tons of like farmland and probably lots of young farmers, you probably have an equivalent of. So they do land matching with older farmers or whatever, just getting 1 acre for these young people. But also they set up farm jobs for. It's just a really cool organization. Even if you try to get in touch with somebody, I know somebody I can put you in touch with if you wanted to like research that stuff, or because maybe they could tell you if Australia has like a Young Agrarians, or maybe you already know type of organization like that. They just do, even in Vancouver, they have this cool map. It's called UMAP, and people can put their front yards or backyards that people want to like garden or farm, and they just started this cool initiatives that so urban people can like get gardening, and just a really cool out of the box thinking organization. I bet you Australia has some sort of something like that.
That's really cool. Yeah, you would think Australia, because Australia has all sorts of different things going on in that realm.
What time scale should I be thinking to start seriously connecting to people?
That is a right now thing.
I was going to say last week.
So like building up the list and getting in contacts and trying to find more people, but I'm still not much of a stage myself where I can say, well, I probably can really. I just don't want to think about it, I suppose.
But do it lean. Like you don't need a marketing platform. You don't need you need an Excel spreadsheet. And when someone says hand up, you go name, email, phone number, what they can help you with. And so then in 3 months time, you go Control F, which is a shortcut for find everyone who can help me with blah. And then there comes all your list, create a simple Google form. Like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Google, I'm sure you are, Google form that collects this data for you. And when someone puts their hand up, say, awesome, I really would love to add you into my network. A simple Google form, there's 4 questions. My biggest thing when people put their hand up to volunteer is get them to jump a hurdle. Because if they just comment on a Facebook group and go, yes, and then you say, hey, fill out this simple form, and they don't be asked doing that, you don't want them in your life, no matter who they are. Like if they're not going to jump through one hurdle to help you, then they're not going to come to your farm. They're not going to follow through with that shit. So like use that as a hurdle to qualify them of how actually active they are. Another lean version could be a Facebook group that's like my personal getting shit done network. Like it's completely private. When someone puts their hand up, you get them to join that group. There's 3 questions to come into the group, and you don't accept them into the group unless they answer that. Like there's some really lean ways that doesn't require any money, doesn't require any automation, doesn't require any SaaS software, but builds you a database that's really, you could have it set up in 30 minutes. And a simple process, and then it's scalable, because if 400 people put their hand up, you go control paste send, control paste send, control paste send 400 times. You know what I mean? And then 40 people will fill out the form, and there's your 40 rock stars.
And even just to go just a tad further on a scalable side as well, is like Excel is great. I've done so many Excels, and I usually start with a prospecting list on Excel, but I move into I've used HubSpot at very scaled events, and they have the CMS for free. The content, or not the CMS, the content, or not even the content. I'm saying, what am I saying? The contact
CRM?
Management system. Yeah, the CRM, right? Contact relationship management. Too many dang acronyms.
Customer relationship.
Customer. There we go. But it's free, right? And you could just have and you can log your calls and everything in it, and now you have something that's searchable, and you can send emails from if you wanted to, but really you have a way to track everything. And that's, I think, a really big key, is like I track all my emails, track all my communication, and I can go back into that. Even if I haven't talked to them for 3 months, I know what happened like it was like last week, because I took notes, right?
Okay, that's if nothing else, that's probably the biggest thing for me to get out of this, get building up on that networking now.
Okay, I have something to add, but it's totally like kind of unrelated to what we've been talking about. Is everyone okay with that?
Sure, please do.
So I know that we've been talking in your strength. We've been talking about logistics, and I know that's where you like to live in your brain, because you're engineer man, right? That's how engineers like to be, right? I'm just curious, because I'm picking up a lot of, and we don't have to dive into this, it could just be like a start for something to think about later, because I know this is a more vulnerable question. But I'm curious about what emotional blocks you're hitting, because I can see you hitting emotional blocks in terms of moving forward. I mean, that could be just negative thoughts that keep coming up, or something that's, I don't know, there's some kind of emotional block there, and maybe I'm tripping, but I'm picking up a lot of that. And I know that from my experience, we didn't have a fire, but we froze up in Montana, and it ruined us, and we had to come back, and there was an incredible amount of healing, because we felt like failures. And every time we have talked about going back up, there's emotional baggage that happens when you have that type of experience that can keep you from moving forward 100%. Yep. So I know that I don't want to push you to open up here, but I would just encourage you to consider what those blocks are, and start writing them down, because chances are it's only a few things and they're recurring. And if you don't address them and get them out of the way, they're going to keep kind of smacking you in the forehead. That's kind of how those work. I was just going to share one thing that's really helpful for me, and that I've used with a lot of mentees. And if you can identify that, whatever that negative thought is, whatever it is, the ones that like keep reoccurring though, that you really like need to get out of your head, if you can write them down, and then like next, like draw a line and write down the negative thoughts that you're hitting. This is like called slaying dragons. You can do this every day. When I'm having a rough time, I do this every single day, and it helps so much. You just like list your negative thoughts. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. Da, 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 da. And then on the other side, you counteract that negative thought with a positive. So, and you do it times 2. So for example, I am not good enough. Okay, so your counteraction would be, I am awesome and I get done. I'm amazing and I do great things, right? I'm amazing and I do great things. Like 2 positives to counteract the negative. and then you tear up the negatives and you get rid of them, and then you start saying the positives over and over, because you've got to reprogram your brain. Especially when we have situations that really went south, when it was something especially that we're so passionate about. We have to be careful that we're not bringing baggage into new projects, because that'll keep it from being as awesome as it can be. So,
yep.
Anyway.
Fair enough, and very, appropriate. Because one of the main, fairly significant part, I don't know, my main emotional blockage is I just want to be alone. It's one of the useful things about 20 acres, and it's basically two kilometers from me to anyone else. And that's awesome. I love that. But I also do think permaculture is the most important way for the world not to suck. And that is the sort of thing that that needs to be spread to as many people as possible. And that's what I want to be able to do. And the way I've generally, especially pre-fire, I did have my life set up that I could do that, so I could have as much space as I need to, but there was still the monthly workshops, and I'm still keeping in contact with people, and being in contact, getting things done. And it balanced reasonably well, the introversion plus the networking parts. But there are, especially again post-fire, there is a lot of that to sort of to work through. So fair enough. It's something I do need to be aware of. It's something I've done a lot more in the past, the positive affirmations and whatnot, whereas I have not been dealing with that as much recently, probably just because I've been busy. So thank you.
And I'll second that. And Ray and I have talked quite a bit just through him going through the Pando Academy stuff. And one of the things that even if you just went through there's something called a release technique and an empowerment technique, right? And a lot of times the empowerment technique is techniques, we do those a lot. Like we go have some coping in nature, right? We do maybe a vision statement, a power statement, or some type of affirmation that gets us riled up. But we often don't do the release techniques of releasing negative emotion. And that's a really strong distinguishing factor of like, get that negative stuff out, because if you're not, the positive stuff doesn't nearly work as well, right? And those empowerment techniques don't really help you as much. So be thinking of that, like get those negative emotions up, out, and away, and don't get them on other people, right? We don't want to throw our negative emotions on people, even if it's like I have someone, Emily, I can talk to all the time. I still don't go drag all my negative stuff from the day on her before I actually just journal it out and say, and then maybe I can have a less emotion talking to Emily when I do need to get something out to a person, right? And get some type of sounding board thought on stuff. But I'm not getting like that feeling of like hatred or frustration or negativity onto someone else, where it might trigger them into something else, right? And then you're just throwing stuff and mudslinging back, or just not even essentially like mudslinging, but just like the negative vibes and vibrations are around, right?
My other 2 cents, sorry to always add 2 cents, but I just feel inclined to share. I'm not sure how open you are to doing, like, say, personality tests or profile tests. I find these really therapeutic for some really weird reason, especially because when we can go online and everyone's saying, do it this way, be like that. I've hung out in business groups basically all my life. And like the number one thing that people always tell me is like, don't multitask, focus on one thing. And then I do several personality tests and workflow tests, and it says, hey, you're a type of person who likes to take shortcuts. You like to diversify. You like to switch tasks. And I read that and go, fuck yeah, that's exactly who I am. And then who are these people to tell me that I'm not like that? So I actually have these printed out. I carry them in my bag. This is my Colby A test, which I absolutely love, Colby A index score. And one of the things I did in a business group once, I also have like my love language report with me. And one of the things I did in a Facebook group once was pick 10 people to reach out to them and just say, hey, I'm doing this coaching program. And they've asked me to ask 10 close of my friends and you're one of them, or family or people in your network, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, and what my uniquenesses are. Because what other people say about you, I just got goosebumps, is so much more powerful than what your brain tells you about yourself. And so this is my results. And the thing is, they're all like, now they're anonymous. I didn't copy who did it. I did this about 1.5 years ago. And so when I'm feeling shit, I just read this and go, you know, you are someone who cares a lot about other people. You focus on the small detail. Yeah, I like being focused on small detail. And I read this and know my weaknesses and go, right, my weaknesses are my biggest opportunity. They're not something bad. We all have strengths and weaknesses. And the one thing that people don't do well when doing personality tests is they're looking for reaffirmation or like affirmation of what they're good at. We already know that because our life has evidence. What we need to work on is go, I'm really shit at focusing on one task. So how do I create a system that enables me to stay engaged and turn the weakness into a positive? You know, so people tell me that I always put myself down. Yes, that's true. So I need to work on that. You know, I always want to be better. And so I read these as a reminder that I have strengths and I have weaknesses. And it's the weaknesses that I need to either bring someone else into my life to fill that gap or partner with someone that can help me do good. And this is why a lot of business partnerships don't work, because you tend to find someone who has similar interests to you. And you're like, oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too. Let's start a business. And then you've got two people who want to do the same tasks and they're not like the yin and yang of each other. So like the Kolbe A test, I'll have to admit, and it's publicly on my website, if you Google my name, like this is so much of a filter for me that I publicly put it on my website to say, this is the type of person I am. If you want to work with me and you align with my Kolbe A test, let's go for it. Because once I read like what my Kolbe A score was and the way that it describes it, I literally copied a paragraph of it and put it on my About Me page because I'm like, that's exactly who I am.
That's me.
You know, yeah. So just know your strengths and weaknesses, and there's nothing wrong. Like the fact that you said you want to be alone. Do you know how many people struggle with being alone? Like that's the number one person's fear. Like people are too scared to sit in a car and listen to nothing. It's like radio, podcast. I can't even go for a walk without blah, 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 in my head. And you're okay with being alone. Like there's a lot of people who would want to learn that skill. You know, and being comfortable with being yourself, and you know, your goal is to be with you and your dog. Like a lot of people would aspire to that and they fear that. So what you think could be a weakness is someone else's like admiration to who you are. So yeah, just, you know, I just felt compelled to share that. And you know, I walk the talk. You know, I don't just say the stuff I recommend. Like I literally do it. And I'm in the process of redoing my vision board as well. Like I don't care how corny it sounds. I'm cutting out pictures and sticking them on my wall because I've lost touch with that stuff over the years, you know. And the last time I did it, I was probably 20 something and now I'm 30 something, and I'd rather just, you know, readjust that and course correct. You know, so yeah, just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, useful. Well, and that's one of the things that's useful with my current organization. I've got big psychology groups that have got all these tests lying around that I can go and grab.
Good stuff. Really good stuff. Thanks for sharing, Ray. We are at the end, and it's been really good. I've enjoyed this. I hope it's been helpful to you, Andrew. I will actually stop the recording here, but next week, just for everybody's knowledge, we have Carol, I believe, right? Carol, are you ready? She might be.
Yeah, I'm here. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will fill mine out this week, and you know, if you guys have a chance to go look at it. I do not have a beautiful piece of property that I am developing into a permaculture site, but what I do want to do is really focus on sort of my story of my business and my brand, the kinds of stuff we talked about last week. So
awesome.
I'll lay some of that out, and we can revisit last week. So
cool.
Next
And
week.
dive deeper even too. So and have a practical thought around it. So yep, that's what we'll be doing next week. Thanks again for showing up, everybody. And yeah, I'll Andrew, I want to chat with you just for a second after, if that's fine. But we'll see everybody next week. Thanks, everybody.
Hey. Bye, guys.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.